Hello, and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today I'm welcoming to the show Catherine Bell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me be, and hello everybody in the ethers who is listening and seeing us.
Yeah, I love that. I guess a big hello to everybody that is listening. Catherine, what a joy to have you on the show. We've just been talking. Well, I asked you if you wouldn't mind me holding for 5 minutes while I made a coffee, and then here we are. We've just been I seem to do that with all my guests pre-show, and then I'm like, we need to hit record now.
It's true. And you know, what if we all just took a breath and had a coffee? Like just invitation for everybody listening and for you and I right in this moment here, just to take a deep breath.
That feels so good. When you
Yes.
gave me that gift before and said, it's okay, B, go get a coffee. Because not everyone will let you. Like, when you just feel the pressure of they're looking at you like, you're wasting my time, you're holding my timer. But what a gift if you actually just say, yeah, sure, just go give yourself 5 minutes, which is what you've just done then.
Change that we're all undergoing right now, that we really need to invite ourselves to become more human by drinking our coffee, by sipping our tea, by sipping in our breath, by experiencing our bodies. And in those moments, we become more human. We aren't human doings. We're human beings, and we're human beings having a lived experience of our lives. So how can we take 5 minutes? And we never know what's going to happen in those 5 minutes. Like, for example, I didn't realize the ringer on my phone wasn't turned off and the phone rang. So clearly there was a reason why you took the 5 minutes for coffee. Like how can we be more human? I think that's the invitation of our
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And when in the between coffee, I actually had a chance to quickly put some mascara on too. And I love, and I know that sounds like a first world problem, right? But just being able to do just more than one, like a coffee, and go and do something that makes me feel good as well. So I think there's sometimes just that ability to pause and do what makes you feel joyful on the inside. It's just the little things, I think. So I think they're really important.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned your mascara, because Alama Seltram Alioni says when we put on our lipstick, it's like putting on our goddess. So how do we take the little moments of putting on our mascara or applying our lipstick and remembering who we really are?
Yeah.
And that we're all here to create and be here and to really experience and savor this amazing life that we've all been gifted.
Speaking of amazing, I think that, we'll get on into what you're doing and everything that you're about. I think that we're underestimating and not giving ourselves enough grace at the moment when it comes to how amazing we all are. At the moment, I feel like there's just all this pressure to, you have to do this, you have to be this. Do you feel that as well? Like, because we are amazing at the end of the day.
We're amazing simply for being. And I think we've forgotten that part of the equation. We all, in many ways, have almost like stickers all over us that we're amazing when we do certain things. And the invitation is to take off the stickers. And our inherent worthiness is simply for being alive. We don't need to do or accomplish anything. And that when we follow that flow and do from that beingness, something more magical happens. So how do we not drop into societal automaticity and societal beliefs, but rather what is true to our own being, what is true to our own soul, our own stream, our own consciousness, so that we can fulfill our particular piece of the collective puzzle at this time, rather than just repeating what has been done for so many decades that may or may not be actually working.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today I'm welcoming to the show Catherine Bell. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you so much for having me, Bea. I love the way you described it. Reshape. Yes, it's time to reshape. It's time to reshape.
It is time to reshape. And then you've had me thinking since we last spoke around from being formless to formed. And it is like we are constantly shaping, reshaping, going from formless to formed and then the next form. And yeah, it is a fascinating time, and what a time to be alive, right? At this time.
It is such a wonderful time to be alive. And to that form and formless, I believe that reality is always exists in paradox. So as leaders, how do we think paradoxically? So not in a land of extremes, but rather a land of what are the actual principles? And the principles often will contain multifacets that we need to be aware of. So, be formless and also be formed. Like for example, today, I love you're wearing your ostrich jacket and your green glasses. And that's a way of being formed.
Yeah.
Because you were deliberate with the glasses, with the jacket. So, and yet this conversation is formless. We don't know what's going to occur, what's going to emerge. So how do we hold the paradox? And often that's a really uncomfortable place for leaders, because it's a place of radical uncertainty. And yet certainty in the radical uncertainty, hence demonstrating the actual paradox that I just spoke about.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my goodness. We're already getting straight on into it, and like we've only been talking for like 2 minutes. How was your weekend going? Because I know it is the weekend for you, and you were just talking about going to or taking an 85-year-old to their birthday. What a beautiful,
yes.
Like 85, it's such a beautiful age, isn't it? And what someone once said to me, I was actually at a funeral last year and she was 43, and was her point of view was that getting old is a privilege. And so hearing the nice news of an 85-year-old, I'm like, that is just gorgeous.
It is just gorgeous. And it's interesting because a hawk just flew overhead, and this 85-year-old, I've known her since I was in grade 1. And we've now become friends. So we go for early morning walks before I've been starting work here. And we walk and we talk. And there's just so much wisdom to be learned from the 85-year-old. And this amazing woman, death, we talked about it the last time, how death has always walked beside me. And not always, but often. And it's such a great awakener, death is, because then I've kind of realized through these absolutely very challenging deaths. So she knew my father, she knew my uncles, she knew my aunt, she knew all these people who have passed quite early in life. And it's just such a privilege to get to take her out on a boat ride to celebrate her 85th birthday. She's like, I don't want any presents. I don't want anything. However, we're doing this boat ride as almost an experience together, and we do it every single year. So I'll be picking her up after this podcast and savoring the boat ride with this 85-year-old woman.
How gorgeous. Yeah, it's so timely, isn't it? Because you are the founder and CEO of the Awakened company. And just being around an 85-year-old, it reminds you to truly be awakened, and exactly what you were talking about. I should also mention you're based in Canada, Ontario, and I should also do a big shout out to the listeners who are listening today, because I always, I get so excited when I'm talking to my guest. It's not that I intentionally forget. It's just that, so I'm just saying a big shout out to all the listeners here. This is going to be a great conversation. So please do like, share, comment, and take away from this what you see fit. I just think that's just putting that lens of how do we take away from this about being awakened versus just sleepwalking our way through life, leadership, and business. I'll put it across the three of them. Catherine, like I said, you're the founder and CEO of the Awakened company. You're You're an 11 years best-selling author of The Awakened Company and a global advocate for conscious leadership, culture transformation, and purpose-driven organizations. However, an important inflection point emerged when, Catherine, you recognized that sustainable business success isn't created by profit alone. I could not agree more. It begins by awakening people, their self-awareness, relationships, and capacity to lead with purpose. That insight reshaped your work from building successful businesses to helping leaders and organizations move from asleep to awake. Today, Catherine, you partner with leaders and teams around the world to create thriving workplace cultures where purpose, well-being, and commercial success reinforce one another. And through your Awakened Ripple process, executive coaching, and leadership programs, you help organizations prove that conscious leadership isn't separate from business performance, it's strength, and that the heart and soul of your work is a belief that when we awaken ourselves first, we create a ripple that transforms our relationship, our organizations, and ultimately the world around us. And I will also say you have a new book coming out next May.
That's right.
What's it called again? It's around creativity.
It's called The Creative Moment, Awaken Your Creativity Through the Enneagram. And it really looks at how we're all creative and invites people into using the Enneagram as a process map to really magnetize and relax into our own creative process. And we have chapters on teams, chapters on how to be in healthy collaboration. And so really our hope is that it's of service to the world at this very, very poignant moment to awaken more of our humanity. I think we've forgotten that our workplaces are places where humans exist.
Yeah.
And the more we can awaken our humanity at this time when we're going through such change, I think the more we will actually have meaningful workplaces and also higher performing workplaces as well. And organizations, I believe, are forces for good. And the only way that we're going to solve our planetary and human challenges is through organizing differently and through the ripple effect.
Yeah, I could not
We've
agree
spoken
more.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, organizing differently is so true. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen this, but I just happened to go onto Substack last night and I read this article around pangram. Have you heard of pangram for like to check if something has been written completely by AI or not? And it got me thinking just about the point you were making then around humanity and coming right back to humans. And it's really timely as well around this, sleeping versus awakened or awakening, because I'm noticing, and no doubt you are, that there's obviously a huge shift happening, revolution. We're in it. It's not new world anymore. And yet there's almost like becoming a bit of a revolt to staying human, staying original. So what Substack's doing is they're putting this filter over the top of all articles going forward that it can check and see how much you put it, you can scan it. I'll send you the link. You can scan to see how much of the is original. So right back to your point around creativity as well. And I'm like, yes, because there's just so much slop out there. And then if leaders are just allowing artificial intelligence to tell them what to do and who they're meant to be, it's quite a scary world when you think about it.
So I went for a long swim with an English professor just before this podcast, and we were talking about AI, and she studies female authors from the 18th century.
Wow.
And she was telling me how there is so much, to use your words, slop, and that really we need to learn how to think, how to feel, and how to sense our body to really even be a good partner with AI. I think AI can be you can use it to build on your ideas, and we need to think through, does this actually make sense? And if we don't have the wisdom to really think things through or articles through, then it's just a whole bunch of blah coming out. She actually saw it as a threat to democracy, which is interesting, which is very, very interesting. So, the invitation is at this time, how do we tap into our humanity So work with all, like, technology is amazing. For example, I looked at a plant the other day and I didn't know you could press the little I button and it will identify what plant it is. And then all of a sudden you have all this resource, which is incredible. And then I
What's
can,
wrong with it? I'm a real green thumb. So whenever my little leaves are like not happy, I'm always just snapping to go, what do I need to do? How do I fix these little unhappy plants at the moment?
which is really, like, that's wonderful. So how do we kind of tap into using technology like that so that in many ways, when you talk about green thumb, like, think about all the bees, like the bees, I'm sure there's a way we can use technology so that we can provide more of a community for the bees to thrive. So the invitation is for us to actually think through. And I love that you brought up nature, because I believe leadership and is a form of, when we look towards nature, nature always is a truth teller. And nature can be brutal, but it can also be it's amazing to watch a tree grow, to watch an acorn break open, put little roots down into the soil and grow. And those are what the pillars of actually, when we do strategy with soul, it's all based on nature's processes.
Also, a little bit about strategy with soul and enneagrams, and also, and I here I go again. I'm like adding to the load of the questions. They're not really questions, but I'm curious for listeners to hear more about it and how, because you have been successful in multiple businesses, and then you came to the Awakened company. How did the soul strategy and the enneagram come to the Awakened company, and what led you to the Awakened company in the end?
So the Awakened Company was a big epiphany, right? So I was sitting in this dimly lit cafe in New York City, and a lightning bolt hit me and said, "You are to write this book called The Awakened Company." And it was just a full body knowing, full body gnosis. And I turned to my colleague, Carolyn, and I said, "Carolyn, I'm to write this book." And she's like, "Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are." And I really loved Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. So I wanted Eckhart Tolle's publisher to publish the book. The first book was based on how to do executive search, which is what one of my companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love to build things and create things. And I think it also helps me in teaching other people because I've made so many mistakes myself. So started writing this book. And my business partners were like, "Kath, this book is terrible." It was a book on recruiting. And then what I realized at the time is actually what we're building at Blue Era, that was the name of the company. What we're building at Blue Era is a different way to work together. It's a different culture, and we are the culture. And so we started experimenting. We were doing mindfulness in organizations in 2008. So the book became almost written as we were building out this executive search firm. And at the same time, I was knocking on the door of Namaste saying, "You got to write this book. And my dear publisher is like, "No, people aren't ready for the book at this time. People aren't ready." And then finally she gave me a number of suggestions. She said, talk to other leaders, get their opinions. So spoke to the CEO of Patagonia at the time, Rose Marcario, spoke to Otto Scharmer. It got endorsed by Tony Robbins. But I was really throwing caution to the wind bee. So I would really invite people to just step into experimenting and just let go of our old cloaks of what we think is possible, and to put on, I love your coat today, to put on, our put on a coat like yours. And
Yes.
yeah. And so they finally said, "Yes, we will publish the book." And so Awaken Company and became a bestseller, but it wasn't like it was a straight line. And Blue Arrow won a number of awards, including being a Profit 10, Profit 200, Best Workplace Culture. And it was all through experimentation and doing things differently. And the Awakened Company helps organizations with building healthy corporate cultures and leadership development. We're very much a boutique leadership development and culture firm. And so we have something called the ripple effect. And that is when we awaken ourselves, we awaken our relationships, our teams, and our organizations and our world. Like every little thing we do is interconnected and entwined with
Love it.
everything else. However, like here's some data. Most people are disengaged at work.
Yeah.
Most people rate the worst time of their day as their time with their bosses. Most people's thoughts are negative. Most organizations don't survive. And I believe, and we believe, there's a different way of working together. And that's what the Awakened Company is about. So I now do the Awakened Company certification, where I'm teaching leaders and executives and teams how to do what I've done in their own organizations and or as a coach to or consultant to organizations. I also, in terms of the ripple, so awakening self, we help people with personal visions. We do the Enneagram, we do mindfulness. With relationships, I have a audiobook from Sounds True on relationships. Is how do we build healthy connection? How do we build heartfulness, mindfulness, spaciousness? And with companies, this is the strategy with soul. Energize. So that's, do we have a vision? Do we
Yeah.
have metrics, And we have our whole corporate culture survey that you can find on our website that's for free. So I would invite people to go and do it. I'm always investigating reality and what is leadership. So this coming fall, we're doing something called Reclaiming Wholeness from a leadership perspective. And we're looking at the Enneagram and the Buddha families through the lens of nature's seasons. And then how does that inform us? And I believe everybody, B, you've got me so, I could just go on, but I believe everybody's a leader. And here's why, B, because the moment we don't think somebody's a leader, it's like putting a sticky on them that says follower. And the research says that if they had one group of people who are labeled leaders, another group who are labeled followers, and then they mocked an emergency. Those who were labeled followers fell apart just because they got the label followers. Those who got the label leaders rose to the occasion. So I think we're at a huge collective shift, B, for
Agree.
how so
I
how are
agree.
we all leaders?
Yeah, I agree. Because it's the same with like the term sustainable versus regenerative. It's not sustainable anymore to just be the status quo, right? Like in everything you're talking about here, follower, when you say everyone's a leader, I agree. It's like everyone is a creative, and yet we get put into these boxes, if you like, of you're meant to be this. And then it's conditioned into you. So you start to believe I can never be anything more than what I'm told I am. And I think that's also where we have this tendency. And I don't know, like I just walk around lately and I'm like, wake up. Like I look at people and they're just like this with their phones and they're walking around and everyone is just so like, I'm all about, leading and living and doing business from the inside out and soulful and heartful and everything you're talking about. However, I do have this concern at the moment around society, and it's like, what's happened to people? Like they just become so almost beige and just like, and is it because they're getting sucked into tech, or is it because for so long, or the way the world is at the moment is it's like, oh, I'm just existing and I'm just sleepwalking my way through that, to use your phrase, your term. So how do we illuminate? How do we wake everybody up? And I think it's like you say, it's people like yourself, it's people like myself that are going to, when they zig, we zag sort of thing in terms of not going to condone or do what we've always done because, and I mean, you've been trailblazing this for ages. I mean, I've always had thoughts around it. I even got challenged at one point, you can't bring soul into business. Like people won't, CFOs, back to profit, people won't ever buy woo-woo. And I'm like, but a business is like a human. It has it's a living, breathing organism. It has it's got a heart, it's got a mind, it's got a body, it's got a soul, it's got everything. Like, what's your view on that?
It's interesting because I really do feel like our organizations are organisms. And I think there's an illusion of separateness. So I feel like people will try to separate and say, oh, well, this is business, so it's different. No, I'm sorry. But if somebody's on a cleanse and they feel terrible because they're on a cleanse, that's going to affect how they work.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's an illusion, this separateness, but we've been programmed to operate on this default patterning. It's like the mode on our humanness is in doing, to your point about people like looking at their screens and not experiencing the actual amazing world that is around us. And so the invitation, I think, so often is just for us to stop and to sense our bodies, come back to, what are we smelling? What are we seeing? What are we tasting? What are we hearing? What are we feeling? And have that inform our experience versus just the automaticity of the human doingness. And I think we need this combination of human doing and human being. And that's what the Enneagram can also help to teach us. What is our default pattern? Because there's some people who will just be always like this, kind of like have trouble getting into motion. However, there's other people who are always in motion. So knowing what our default pattern is and being present enough so that we can drop into the moment so that our leadership, what is needed in the moment arises. Because I believe we are all awakened. We've just forgotten. So, we're to this whole point about sleepwalking. We're sleepwalking everywhere, yet underneath it all is our light, our capacity to be here. We just need to chisel off all of this programming, all of the sticky notes that we've posted all over us from society. And I also really feel it's a time of the collective, I think, and feel that it's time to wake up. And Margaret Wheatley said people support what they create. And we need to all be involved in the creation of
I agree.
our organizations.
Yeah, I think that's where when we're all involved in the creation, all these beautiful minds come together, and that's where you get these different ideas, different ways of reorganizing or reshaping the way the business looks like, the structure, all of it, right? It's funny. I lived close to the beach here in Melbourne, and it's cold winter's day. Molly Bob absolutely loves going to the beach so he can run, and we were playing ball. And just back to your point around, as leaders in particular, the power of the pausing and the ability just to go and step into nature. And he will not let me on my phone when I'm walking or talking. The minute I pick my phone up, he stops and he just looks up at me as if to say, "Mum." And I'm like, okay. So I'm talking to this 2.5-year-old little puppy. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, that's what I say to him all the time. Then he trots off. Anyway, I actually was just yesterday walking with him and I was thinking to myself, this is what it's about. This is like, we were at the water. He stopped. He played. He wanted to sit with me. He wanted to and I think that's where you get your fresh perspectives as well. It re-energizes you and you come back better. Because I get my best ideas when I'm in moments like that for business or, for problem solving as well. And yet here we are, even when it comes to the weekends, we have this tendency to, I've got to cram so much in. I've got to do all this stuff because that's what we are expected to do. Then we get back to work on a Monday, exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
It just unfolds that way.
What's really interesting about what you said too is it begs the question, what are we doing in our organizations that those ideas aren't coming to us? So the majority of people get their breakthroughs outside of work. So my invitation is, what do we need to do inside of our organizations to allow the experience that you had with your puppy every day so that people don't, aren't asleep, aren't disengaged at the office. People are engaged and they find work meaningful. And I think a huge part of that is to the self-awareness. We know the highest performing leaders are ones that are self-aware. So, and yet only 10% of leaders are actually self-aware. So how do we bring that self-awareness into our organizations? And how do we go for a walk on the beach when we're expected to be in the office because we were present enough to know that that's the right thing in that moment to do for us and for our organization? There's been so many CEOs that I have worked with that have found themselves crying in their parking lot because their work is so meaningless. And I don't know about you, but I don't want a world like that for anybody. So that was you.
That was me. That's when I had my burnout. Yeah. And I saw my shamanic healer without getting all into that. And she threw the cards out and there I was just my hands like this. And I think when you get to that point, and I think as leaders and organizations, there's a lot to be said, because when it becomes meaningless, it's really hard. And I think that's where you put the mask on and it's almost like your soul's screaming at you. How can you be truly engaged with your team, and how can you bring a team alive, if you like, when you're not even able to, everything's meaningless to you. And so I think that is the biggest, I guess, shift we need to make today, because I still see so many leaders, like you say, in the car park or wherever, going into work, doing their thing. And it's like, what does this inside truly want? And why are you continuing to do it this way? I was stuck. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I think that's somewhat the problem in a lot of businesses, is just this fear of, or scarcity of, if I stop this, or if I change it, what if I lose my job? Or what? Like, there's all these silly questions that pop up, when actually, if we stopped and thought about and paused and went, what is this truly wanting here? What is my soul asking of me? I think we find better answers and solutions and ways forward from within. And yet there's just this inability at times to be able to do that.
And the invitation is really to plug in to our beingness, because that's where the answers will flourish and come from. And you mentioned your shamanic healer, and I would really invite in intuitive arts into our organizations, because that's a way to be more creative, more innovative, that AI cannot replicate. So it's interesting, because I feel like AI is opening the portals, opening the doors for how we actually work together, because we can up-level how we're working together, because we can have agents doing certain things, and our beingness, can be involved in actually thinking things through and being thoughtful. So when it comes to like strategy with soul, what are we energizing? What are we sustaining? And how are we regenerating? And building, I see organizations as like healthy forests. So how do we build healthy forests using these different pillars, and to be deliberate? And I don't believe strategy. Often, I'll ask leaders, okay, what's your vision? And I'll go around the table and nobody has a consistent answer. If we don't know at least where we're going, what our intention is, how can we possibly do the rest? So the invitation is for everybody to understand, what's our personal vision? How does it plug into that collective vision? And then what's our emergent roadmap? Yeah. And I think the key word is emergent. I even struggle with the word strategy, because it's based on military terms. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be at war with anybody. I really want us to think differently at the different level of collective, and how we're all part of each other. So to think about road mapping. Okay, here's our vision, here's our action plan, metrics, values, our structures. And then here's how we're going to spend time regenerating: innovation, creativity, peacefulness.
Agree. Catherine, you've been like, with the book 11 Years Young, I'll say young, like, you're ahead of your time. And like, you've no doubt had resistance to some businesses, and some leaders are like, no, you're off, like, you're too woo for me. Like, what are you talking about? It is profit first, profit, all of that. And there's some great books out there and even more new books coming out around challenging that. I'm going to send you one that someone just mentioned the other day. You may have already read it. I can't remember it from the top of my head right now. I'll send you the link though. Like, this is also something that I think about at times, in terms of, if we continue to do it the way we've always done it, and if we have this belief, like you do and like I do, that there is a different way, and that we can be far more happier, healthier, a profit will follow. Absolutely. You'll have more meaning, and, everything will be interconnected. What keeps you going though? What keeps you awake? Because there's no doubt days where you get pushback and it's like, what are you talking about? Like soul, or maybe I could be wrong. This is new. This is frontier, pioneering a way forward that is a very different business model to one we've always known and existed. How do you break through, and how do you keep going on the days that, like, because you can't always be up, like coming right back to, being awakened and sleepwalking some days, or, being, some days we have our days, right? How do you do it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget in 2008, standing in front of a room of investment bankers talking mindfulness. And at first they were all like this,
Yeah.
like,
What's she
no,
talking about?
what's she talking about? And then I led a sensing practice. And then we discussed what the experience was of the sensing practice. And by the way, I'm up at the front and I'm totally sweating because I was totally nervous. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But yet there's something in me that continues like push the envelope. Like it's almost like my soul
You're in the
blueprint.
zone. You're in the
Yeah.
zone.
Yes. Yes. And so it hasn't, and gradually those investment bankers, their bodies relaxed. And they left with a whole bunch of practices on how they can remain grounded, centered leaders, as well as they all left with knowing their Enneagram points. And don't you find that we must go into the discomfort, and that's where our edge is? So
100%.
so for me, and for me, like, for example, with writing the Awakened Company, I was asking people, I kind of threw caution to the wind. I was asking people to participate in the book that I thought that they would say no. And the majority said yes. And my work continues because now I'm like, okay, now I'm building the Awakened Company Collective. We're acting like an organism now, which is an entirely different model, and it's uncomfortable. So where there's been fear in my life, oh yeah, and I didn't like to speak. So often I would hand my notes to my colleague and he would speak my words.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine you not liking to speak, because I feel like you would just be like, oh, get up on the stage. Like, yeah.
Well, I've had to learn it, but I've turns towards the discomfort to kind
Yeah.
of the fear that people are going to reject me, turn towards that discomfort, and then something pops open.
Yeah.
Also, I really, really believe in using business research. So the Awakening Company is based on business research, my practical experience, and wisdom traditions. And it's interesting. You might think that those would be different, but they're all actually pointing in the same direction. And what I find with leaders is when I can get their head center to just relax and say, okay, we're going to do a centering practice. And taking this pause is going to make you more productive, more creative, and have a deeper impact on you than just going on automatic. People will listen.
Yeah.
So then their heart comes on stream, their body comes on stream, because often people aren't really in their bodies. When you talked about people on their phones walking around, how are they sensing their feet? How are they moving through the world with using their senses? And I think the invitation with AI is to use our senses more and more. Almost
Couldn't
like
agree.
another dimension of our
Yeah.
instincts are going to be turned on.
Yeah, and living in that discomfort, or kind of leaning into the discomfort, it's not for the faint. I shouldn't even say it's not for the faint-hearted. I think it's just more that in discomfort there is always an awakening. Like, it's like grief, right? You talked around death earlier. Like, there's always an awakening that comes from it, and there's always, for me, it's like this post-traumatic growth. You grow, you evolve from it, and so by stepping into it. And it's almost like sometimes when I'm in it, I'm like, it's almost like I'm shutting my eyes going, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. When you just like, and then you open your eyes because you're like, oh, I got through that bit. Like, it's like that and I think for leaders and businesses in particular, yes, there is some tough times out there at the moment, like the state of the world, politically, economically, all of that. We have choices. We can either just, I guess, surrender to the fact this is what is happening. However, how do I, as a leader or as a business, work my way through the current situation we're in, know when to pivot, and not react because of external circumstances, come right back to what does this business and I need as a leader to truly take us forward. And then I think it's sometimes we've got to get back to that a lot of the time as well, in terms of what does the business, so love your business like you love yourself. If you don't love yourself and you don't love your business, well, you're treating both like utter crap. So you're going to get utter crap back, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. It's actually a good reason why I don't like the term human resources, because I don't believe humans are resources. I believe that everything is imbued with life, to your point. Like, love ourselves, love what we do, because to do otherwise really doesn't actually make much sense. And we don't get to redo any moments. So back to that whole death piece, death is a great awakener to really show up for our lives and to step in and step out and step sideways. And I think also discernment's going to become more important, to your point, to what do we say yes to, what do we say no to, and to be clear in our discernment, because I think the relentless pursuit of more does nobody any good.
No, I think you're right. And I also think that the more we do at times, the less chance we have of being creative or innovative in terms of how do we reimagine or reshape back to that point? Because we're just in this do versus the space of being and doing. I want to get your thoughts on procrastination. And I had a really interesting observation the other day, and and you would see this too with businesses and leaders, and at times there's almost like the fight or flight or freeze, and you must see a lot of this at the moment with leaders and businesses where they're just almost like in this like no man's land. And it's not even like, it's just this procrastination from a point of not moving forwards, not going backwards, and so I was reading this piece of research the other day around procrastination and watched a little video. And I don't know if you've heard of Stephen Kotler, who's ex-Flow Research Collective, but he's all around flow science. And he was talking about procrastination being a good thing. And this comes right back to this being and doing piece, right? Because quite often in procrastination, you need to sense check, are you procrastinating because the challenge is too stressful or, out of your skill set, or is it that you're procrastinating because there's too much apathy, you're bored? And so having a think about procrastination is not a bad thing, but almost a stopping point, and in terms of, well, why am I procrastinating?
Mm-hmm.
And so for leaders, I think there's a lot of that happening at the moment. It was a really good perspective for me, and I'm thinking, because the minute you talk about it, like procrastinating, it's like you're doing nothing, or you're looking at your teams like, what's everyone doing?
Yeah.
Do you know, I just thought it was really interesting, and I'd love your thoughts on it. I know it's a bit random throwing it in there, but someone like yourself must have a point of view on that in business.
Well, first of all, I love the random, B. I think we need to pay way more attention to the random than we do. Because when the random kind of captures our attention, I feel like it's the universe winking at us. And when the universe winks at us, we must pay attention. And so procrastination, my sons, when they were at the cottage where I am now, they would often say, I'm bored. And I'd be like, great. That is so good. Sit in the boredom. Just sit with it. And it's kind of like procrastination. Sit with it, because then something else pops. And we must be willing to sit and ruminate and let things germinate and let the seeds, whatever's being planted, let it have time and space to grow in a good way. Because can you imagine, the only thing that relentlessly grows is cancer. So we don't want to be relentlessly growing. That's like not healthy.
No.
It's just not healthy. So I think procrastination is wonderful and boredom is wonderful. And to sit with it and to see what emerges from it, to see what presencing our procrastination, our boredom, maybe our twitchiness, like it then invites another way, another thing to happen. However, if we just keep doing da 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 da, that's just automaticity.
Yeah.
It's just
Tell us,
automaticity.
tell us a little bit about automaticity, Catherine, because you've used that term and I absolutely love it. And I can't say I've actually heard automaticity like the way you speak about it. And I think for the listeners in particular, there's tons of automaticity. What does that mean? And how do you apply that? Like, what does that look like in business? What does that look like in leaders? And then what's the invitation for leaders and businesses right now based on your call out of automaticity?
So I believe everybody has a default operating system, and that's automaticity. And it's also the way we're sleepwalking. And when we understand what our Enneagram patterns are, we can then realize that there are different lenses, there are different colored glasses, which is why I love that you wear different colored glasses, B. There are different colored glasses that we can wear that are not automatic. We can stop in the middle of this podcast. We can randomly ask, I want to talk to you about procrastination. This is getting out of the default. This is getting out of automaticity and allowing presence to emerge as leaders and in our leadership instead of always being the same, which is the automatic. And most people are automatically asleep and most leaders are automatically asleep. We only have, remember that 10% of leaders that are actually self-aware. And so self-awareness becomes the portal for how do we disrupt our automaticity, because we realize, okay, we've got these gifts. We can open up our realm of what we can help. And we can also then work with different people who complement our automatic so that we are, and everybody becomes more awakened.
That because it's when you're at your best as well. It's when I like to call it you shine your brightest, when you are out of automaticity and you can be who you truly are. I think that's where you get the most amount of creativity, innovation, and businesses that, someone's asked me the other day how, like when a team is in flow, if you like, and everything's just working. Like, how does that work? And I'm like, well, and I kind of explained, it's around familiarity, losing your ego, the ability to have open communication, all of that. And there's that yes and piece, right? Like it's not shutting things down. It's actually embracing all the different ideas and everything so that that's where you do get the results, which comes a couple of final questions for you. Profit. I want to come right back to profit. Because profit is one of those words. And, it's like profit and success. And it's like money makes the world go round. Profit equals success. Your business is, performing and the leader is performing. And yet the bigger question for me is at what cost? And so the question I have is like, there's, of course, profit, results are absolutely important. We need that. We also need the other piece here as well. Like when you're working with businesses and leaders, what's your point of view on that, or what's your advice when it comes to like, well, profit is always good. It always has to come first. Like, how do you?
An organization that I worked with went from $0 to $1 billion in less than 5 years. And the worst performing organizations are those that focus on finances alone. So I think we need to look at the business research. The middle performing organizations are those that focus on culture. The highest performing organizations are those that focus 2/3 on culture, 1/3 on financial success. So that is all built into the strategy with soul. So when in the first Awaken company cohort, they weren't paying enough attention to the finances. We need both. And I almost see it as the divine feminine and divine masculine.
Yes.
The divine feminine being the mercurial culture and the divine masculine being the more linear financial. We need both working together. However, the alchemical mix is 2/3 focused on corporate culture, 1/3 on financial success. When CEOs most often say to me, can you help me? Can you get me to that financial number? And that's the wrong MO. That's the default operating pattern.
Yes.
That's happening. The invitation is, okay, 2/3 focus on culture, 1/3 on finances. And we need both. We need both working in harmony together, again, this paradoxical kind of a relationship between profit and culture. And I do believe it's our culture, again, the weighting of culture is far greater than the weighting for finances. And it sets everything. When you speak of flow, organizations that have high psychological flourishing, high trust, they'll be in that state of kind of cultural growth where the flavor of the company is the best ever kiwi fruit you've ever tasted,
Yeah.
and the smell will be of that wonderful coffee in the organization. And whereas unhealthy organizations, they'll be like the soil's rotted and it's all just about money
True.
and how much I'm making and how much other people are making. And that's a recipe for a completely unfulfilling life.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. I agree. I love that. So tell us, last question for you, Catherine, the book. Tell us a little bit more about the book that's coming out in May. And how is that, like, from obviously the Awaken company and everything you've done with that and the book and also the business, and what brought you to this latest book?
Mm-hmm. Well, there might be some surprises around the Awakened company, so just stay tuned to that dial, B. I can't say anything yet, but there's things that are emerging. And I really see healthy organizations as highly creative and highly innovative. Even if there can be organizations who are highly operational or highly customer driven or highly innovation and creative. Innovation and creativity is needed everywhere. And I think I'm kind of fascinated by creativity and innovation because where does it come from? Does it exist in the air? Does it exist on the earth? Does it exist in the clouds and the trees? And then how can we actually more tap into our zone of creativity and expand our zones of creativity and then work with other people that help this creative functioning? So I'm very, very upcoming by it and planning to do, anyway, there's lots upcoming.
Yeah, that's exciting. I actually think for me, creativity and innovation is energy, if you ask me. I don't know, like I just have this feeling like it comes from, like it's not, you can't touch it. It's just this energy, and it depends on the people you're around, the situation, the environment you're in. Like when you have novel experiences, if you keep staying in the same environment, doing the same thing, you're actually blanking out your creativity. The minute you move into a different environment, create a novel experience, have a pattern recognition interrupt, your creativity comes. When when I put the best teams together, and even when I go into businesses, you're looking at the different personalities, you're getting a vibe from them, and you're like, let's just put that energy together. And so that's kind of like, I've always been a massive believer in, that's why for me, you can get like an accountant, and you put them with an actual, writer or an art director or creative, like anything is possible. So it's like almost like putting it into the, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking like the science, the beaker, and putting into the beaker, and then out it all comes. And I think that like if we keep putting it in and then different pieces into it, you're going to get different and better ideas and innovation. So I'm a big believer in it. Hence why this woman and all of her little fingers, because it's that constant putting things together.
Yes, and creativity is a vibration.
Exactly.
And tapping into that vibration. And the ancient Egyptians thought numbers held vibration. So how many fingers does that woman have behind you? Do you know?
2, 3. It's about 8, I think. 1, 2, 3. Let me have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, 8. Oh, there you go. 8. Yeah.
So, and eight's, when you look at the vibration of eight's a very magical number. Eight's a very, very poignant number. So then how does then knowing that this woman has 8 fingers affect your leadership without you even knowing? Because I believe our unconscious is always processing the things in our environment, and they're actually informing us far more than we know. And I also love, remember the last time I spoke about Shushat with the woman with the star, because that woman has a star on her head, the star above her head, always aware of context. But now you have the number 8 again appear, B. So what does that mean to you? What is the vibration of 8? And what is the divine principles associated with 8? And I think all of these ancient intuitive arts are going to come back and start to inform our organismic organizations to
I'm
be
so
of more
excited.
service. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Talking
Very
to someone like
exciting.
you, Catherine, like, and for all the listeners out there, like when Catherine and I connected, I had actually done, I was looking at like businesses around the world. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Catherine, and there I was, and I found the Awakened company online. I'm like, oh, that feels so on point with me and where I'm like where I'm going and what I was looking up to your business, like going, this is possible. This is the new, well, I shouldn't even say new. This is business. I see business like this too. I see leaders. And so I think I encourage, it's about encouraging, don't keep doing the same old, like open your eyes, be awake. So last and final thought, Catherine, what would be your words of wisdom? I won't say advice for all the listeners and everyone out there at this very point in time when it comes to leadership and business. What would be your final words of wisdom?
To take a breath, take a deep, deep, deep breath. Sense your body, see what's around you, smell what's around you, taste what's around you, feel, investigate who you really are, and continue that thread of investigation. Look at your Enneagram point, look at your Buddha family, and know that you are what you've been looking for. The you just has to show up.
And look, there you are. There's the Buddha. He's so calming. Or like I just said a he that like behind you, and then he said there's the bees as well. And yeah, so true. And my feet, I've got my feet grounded in carpet right now, and I'm just like, they feel really like, I think it's a great way to start my day. So Catherine, thank you so much. How do we find out more about the Awakened company? No, I know the book's coming out next May. I'll get you back on to talk about the book when it's ready to launch.
Thank you, B. Go to awakenedcompany.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll get all of our updates. We also provide really practical newsletters. Look at our Reclaiming Wholeness class that we're offering on the Enneagram, the Buddha families, and stay tuned to your podcast, upcoming podcast.
Catherine, I am so excited for you to go on your boat cruise with what's your 85-year-old friend's name?
Beverly.
Beverly, that's right. You did say Beverly.
I'm going to send you a picture of Beverly, B, just so you will, I'm going to email you a picture of Beverly because she'll love that she was woven into the podcast.
No, it's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And, for me, that is all about what life is about, embracing and just enjoying those beautiful moments, because what a beautiful 85. Like it is a privilege to age. And I think that we sometimes forget that sometimes just to stop and enjoy those moments and get the wisdom from someone of that age. And then, I don't know, I just love it. It's just a great way to enjoy. And so, yeah, thank you, Catherine, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a beautiful conversation. And listeners, there's so much to take away from this conversation. I will share all the key nuggets in the show notes. And thank you. Everyone enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, B. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.